Hockey Talk Show back with you here live on this Monday, April 23rd, 6:30 in the p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we got some big hockey news breaking all over the National Hockey League while General Manager Chuck Fletcher out as GM after 9 seasons. Bill Peters in. So Fletcher out, Peters in. Peters in. Inappropriate. This is the Hockey Talk Show. Welcome. Oh, so excited to be here with you, Hockey Talk Show. The Hockey Talk Show, the world's only live call-in, comment-in, interactive hockey talk show that takes place on a daily basis where intelligence and pants are not required, but hockey passion is. I'll be playing the role of your host, Anthony, for the next little while or so, and we are going to get all over and just cover ourselves in wildness. Minnesota wildness. And we're also going to touch on Bill Peters a little bit there. He rolls on over to Calgary. Last show that we did, driving in the car on my way to John Popper of Blues Traveler, we talked about Bill Peters and will he land somewhere else? And I did mention the Calgary tie-in and what that looked like for him over there. And I said it's possible. He's, hometown guy and kind of makes a lot of sense if he goes there. But I did say, he's not exactly, a winning coach. Doesn't make a lot of sense for the Calgary Flames. And it looks like the Calgary Flames put less thought into this than I did. I like the move. It's good. Is it fantastic? I just don't really know, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm just not entirely sure if that's the case. Comment below. Let me know where you guys are watching / listening from, what you'd like to discuss. I think it's going to be a little bit of a rapid fire show this evening. We will hear from the Wild owner, Craig Leopold. He had a press conference this evening or this morning, I should say. And, it was pretty informative, and I'm going to share some of that audio with you on this episode of the Hockey Talk Show. Plus, we're rolling pretty strong with the playoffs here, and they've been pretty exciting. That Gensel Couturier just shootout from the other day was just utterly ridiculous and such a pleasure to watch. I hope you guys really are enjoying the playoffs right now, even if your team is not in it. I mean, there is just no reason whatsoever to not be loving this year's playoff series. How about the Washington Capitals mounting a comeback and putting their money where their mouth is and pressing the Columbus Blue Jackets to the brink of elimination? I mean, who saw that coming? Although I honestly, I love to be, cocky, but I picked Washington. I did, but seeing how Columbus came out and played in those first 2 games, it definitely made me worry about that pick. The 2 picks that I was worried about was the Washington-Columbus series and the Boston-Toronto series, and no surprise, these games now are heading into Game 6 territory. But I will say, credit the Toronto Maple Leafs with what they've been able to do. There's no doubt about it that the Boston Bruins have been the hottest franchise in the National Hockey League over the last month or two. You could say a little bit even more than that. And nobody wanted to play them. People were talking about how much better they were than the Tampa Bay Lightning, blah, 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 this and that, so on and so forth. I don't know about any of that, but there's no doubt, there's no argument from me that they were the best team in the National Hockey League heading into these playoffs. And now, you got to take them on in the first round. Not an easy thing for the Toronto Maple Leafs to do, which, by the way, it's their second year in the playoffs. But not, It's their second year. Let's not forget Austin Matthews. This is year number 2 for Austin Matthews. That's no doubt the leader and face of this franchise now. Game 6 against the hottest team in the league is a win, is a win, is a win. I mean, they should feel really good about themselves and what they've been able to build on. You finally have something there with Freddie Anderson. You finally have something now with Marner and Matthews and Nylander, and you got Marlowe for another run at it next year. And again, I'm not saying it's over. It is not over for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I hope they feel like they're playing with house money because they've done really well. And, they shouldn't be ashamed of anything. They've really done a good job. Daniel, go Leafs go. That's what my man. Finally able to watch this live. Go Bolts. Matthew, welcome into the show. John, all these other teams being aggressive, Isles tiptoeing. It seems teams are wasting no time this year. We're going to hear from Craig Leopold and his thoughts on this, but I did, again, you look at the Canes, you look at the Islanders, who we are the only real outlet talking about that, there's going to be a hire from the front office of the New York Islanders, whether that is a GM and Garth Snow moves up the ladder to president of hockey operations, or if a president comes in and Garth stays where he is. I don't know, but there's 2 teams with GM issues. Now there's 3 with the Minnesota Wild coming into the mix. But there's no doubt that this puts pressure on both the New York Islanders and the Carolina Hurricanes. You look at a team like the Minnesota Wild, who have just been in the playoffs nonstop. 6th overall last season. They were 8th overall this season, so they fell off a little bit. But still, they are one of the premier teams in the league, and they're firing general managers left and right here today. You can only really fire one. I don't know why I pluralized that. But they are setting themselves for a standard. They're saying, look, we've had some success in the playoffs. We had regular season success. Financially, I'm sure they're doing just fine. They're selling out like every damn game over there. So there's a lot of wins. You go look at their stacks of wins. They got them. They're doing just fine. And they're sitting there going, but it still ain't good enough. And now you go ahead and you look at a team like the Islanders, and you go ahead and you look at a team like Carolina, and you understand why a move was made. Dallas, with Hitchcock stepping aside, everybody's starting to wonder about Jim Nill now. I still think he's a good hockey guy. I still think it's good that they're sticking with Nill. But again, it raises the stakes on some of these other teams. It raises the stakes on some of these other teams big time. Big time. Again, when one of the big boys are up there going, not good enough, we're going to fire our GM of 9 years, who everybody in the whole entire world, including the owner who fired him today, agrees is a great hockey mind. It kind of makes you want to pick up the game. Ishan wants to talk about the Oilers. Lay your question on me, my man. Throw it my way. How about this? Tyson wants to talk about the Oilers too. Mikko Koskinen to Edmonton. There's speculation that he will sign 2 years, 2.5 AAV. Thoughts could be a push for Talbot to play better. There's no doubt that if you're the Edmonton Oilers, you have to figure out your goaltending situation. You've got to figure out your D a little bit. You've got to figure out, I think, primarily a winger for 97. Maroon's moved on now. I thought that was a good move. I thought that was a positive step in the right direction for the Edmonton Oilers. And I think that they got a lot of things that they got to work on. And primarily, I would spend a lot of time focusing on the net and who sits on 97's wing. Because that's just something that you got to really, really figure out. Do you mean Mikko? Mikko. All right. I don't want to get into specifics on any of this. I don't know Mikko Koistinen. You mean Mikko Koskinen? Do you think Nuge is a good fit for McDavid on his wing? Chemistry, man. It all depends. It really, really all depends. Isles' new GM will be Rick DiPietro. please. You know how many heart attacks there'll be on that day in Long Island? No hospital will be able to handle that. As far as the Edmonton Oilers, I will say this. Boy, I hate to like push you guys aside, but we got like huge Minnesota news today with a fired general manager. So I do want to maintain the focus on that. We can definitely spend some time on the Oilers, and we will, once the playoffs sort of calm down. But I mean, we can spend, I could do a whole show, and we probably will, on the Edmonton Oilers and some of the problems that they need to fix, which is plentiful. Just quickly going over, let me just bring up the Oilers in front of me here so I have it, so I'm not just talking out of my better side. Anything else you want to talk about? Get in quickly, because I do want to get to the Craig Leopold thing. Oh, Ishan's cool with me moving to the side. I like that, brother. I gotta say though, I mean, don't you love McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nuge? You do. I mean, that's 225 goal scorers and a 41 goal scorer. Nugent only had 24 this year, but technicalities. Past that is a problem. Oh, Lucic, we talked about this before. You got to figure out Lucic. Get him off of that payroll. It was a nice signing 2 years ago. It did not last long. He's just too slow for the NHL today. I realized the NHL, they flipped that page very quickly, but this is a speed league. It was going in that direction a while ago, but I don't know if we all thought it was going to go this fast, kind of like the way Facebook went. But yeah, that's an issue. Camilleri was taking up a roster spot this year. Ryan Strome is a 0. Got to move on from Strome. They got a lot of fat to trim over there. They don't have their mid-6 is terrible. It's just terrible. Your top two lines you can stretch out between McDavid and Nugent Hopkins and Draisaitl, and where you kind of fit all those guys together. But your mid-6 sucks. And take a look around. Look at Gensel lighting up the scoring sheet like nobody's business the other night. When you get into the playoffs, your bottom 6, that matters. The role guys matter. When teams' top line and top 2 lines are being just, strangled, that's when these other guys matter. It was Mikko Koskinen. I remember Mikko from the Islanders. I don't know, man. I don't know. He had a lot of potential. I will say this, the goalie market is not great in the offseason as far as free agency goes. I mean, really, really nothing to write home about anywhere. You don't have that star franchise goaltender coming up for free agency this year. It's just not there. It's just not there. So you better find it wherever it is. A lot of these, there's 29, 30, and let's be honest, 26 general managers hoping to make that Devin Dubnyk trade this year and figure out something to make it happen. Danny, in class, can't watch right now. Go Bruins. That's cool, man. Appreciate the comment. Hit the thumbs up. Make sure you share it. You could always just listen. I will take zero offense to not wanting to stare at this face at any point at all. Let's hear from Craig Leopold. He is the owner of your National Hockey League, Minnesota Wild, and he fired a general manager this morning, and he had a lot to say about it, starting with this.
This morning I had a conversation with Chuck Fletcher, and I indicated to Chuck that I would not be renewing his contract for the next couple of years, and we had a great conversation after 9 years of being with our team, and frankly, very successful in making in the playoffs. I shared with Chuck that we wanted to get further. I wanted a new set of eyes on this team. And we had a very good conversation, shook hands, and we're going in a different direction.
How agonizing was the decision last week or so, and what was the final factor that led to this?
Okay. Very agonizing. I like Chuck. In fact, probably more than I like Chuck. I respect him tremendously. I didn't decide on this definitively until a couple days ago. In our new practice facility, we have a motto. It's the first thing that you see when you walk in the door. And it is, good is not good enough. And I went through the practice facility about 2 weeks ago, and I felt like that was a signal for me. And it starts with me. It starts with the owner and the general manager, and my feeling is that the last couple of years, we just have not been good enough. So, the decision had nothing at all to do with the Winnipeg playoffs, nothing. Without two of your very best players, it's pretty hard to be successful. So I didn't, that was really not a factor. And like I say, it was a tough decision, but I'm very comfortable with it.
Craig, in your opinion, what needs to happen with this roster?
Well, I don't know definitively, but I know that we're not good enough right now. I think what I want to have is a new set of eyes and take a look at where our strengths and where our weaknesses are, and somebody will come in who doesn't feel an ownership to certain players, and I want someone to take a look and what we can do to tweak our team. This is not a rebuild.
I'm going to stop it right there because he said something that was very, very important when you look at the evaluation of this franchise, and it's somebody that is not loyal to our players. And I hate to point fingers, but I'm looking at you, Mikko Koivu. I honestly cannot for the life of me understand how Mikko Koivu has managed to stay in the National Hockey League, let alone remain in Minnesota Wild. The guy is mediocre at best. He is by far one of the most overrated players I've ever seen. He is absolutely not Saku. He got the C on his jersey. They love to play him up in the middle. He has every bit of potential from his size and everything else. He's 35 now. I should actually take a look and see what his cap hit is and how much longer he's going to be on this team. But honestly, I mean, just awful. Just awful. Never liked Mikko Koivu. Thought it was bad. Thought the Wild stuck with him for far too long. I think the Wild have made a couple of bad moves. And Chuck has made a couple of bad moves. But overall, I think he's a great player. Mikko makes 6.75, and I believe he was signed to an extension, or is this just part of his thing? He's making 5.5 next year and 5.5 million the year after that, and he's 35 years old. That is far too much for a 15 goal scorer. Far too much. And you know what? I can rack up 30 points and assists on that team too. If I was just the puck could accidentally hit me, and I can still get 30 assists on a team with Zach Parise and Michael Granlund and Nino Niederreiter. All right. And Eric Stahl with his 42 goals this year. So I'm not impressed with Mikko at all. I think he's a big black hole in the middle of this lineup. And I think he's part of the reason why Chuck Fletcher finds himself out on the beach this week. I think Craig is a really smart owner. I think he's really good. Obviously, he has no problem spending money. 9 years with Chuck. He's very, very loyal to him. And I think it's the right time. And he said it in that last little thing there. He needs somebody with a fresh set of eyes. Sometimes you just do. You know, you hear general managers say the same thing about coaches, like, we just need a new voice in the locker room. Well, sometimes you need a fresh set of eyes in the front office chair. They're setting a standard for themselves. First round, second round and out is not good enough. They want to win a Stanley Cup. They obviously have some holes in the roster. This team was built really well. Does okay. Starting to get a smidge on the older side when you look at Eric Stahl and Zach Parise. And how old is Suter? Suter is 33. Wow. Parise, Suter, and Stahl are all 33 years old. So you're going to have to start making some moves and looking towards the future past some of these guys. Now, it's hard to look past these guys. Suter signed till 2024, and so is Zach Parise. They're at $7.5 million. Those are tough contracts to get through. But those are honestly two pretty good players. And Eric Stahl proved this guy wrong right here, and I think most of the National Hockey League wrong, including his wife and his mom, that he's still got a lot left in the tank. And I don't know if he puts in 42 this year, but he's certainly going to do some damage. Where this leaves Bruce Boudreau, I don't know. I know he signed a 4-year deal back in 16, so my third grade math level tells me he's got 2 years left on his deal, so I think he would be safe. But moving on from that point, I think he's got this year. Because you bring in a new general manager and hopefully he likes Bruce and hopefully they get along. But, outside of this one more year to improve themselves, how much longer until they make another move? I mean, you look at Craig Leopold and what he did for Chuck Fletcher here. He never renegotiated his deal. He let him be a lame duck GM. He went through this entire season without a contract. Similar to what Toronto's doing with Lou Lamoriello, which I still can't understand. I don't know if that's by design from Lamoriello's standpoint, that he doesn't necessarily want to commit to the Leafs, or, nobody's really talking about it. And I find it hard to believe that Lamoriello's getting that much evaluation from the Toronto Maple Leafs. But again, that's another organization that this is their time to win, and they want to win now. So I get it from that standpoint, but still, on the other standpoint, it's Lou Lamoriello, and he's done a pretty damn good job with this Toronto Maple Leaf roster. We've seen the Marleau signing's been great. The Freddie Anderson trade has been great. He drafted, Matthews. He fell into his lap, but he still had to pull that trigger. Could have done a million different things with that pick if he wanted to. He still made the deal. He still drafted the player. He still gets credit for it at the end of the day. So I don't know what Toronto's doing, but I know what Minnesota's doing, and they're making some moves. So we'll see what happens with Boudreau, whether or not he gets an extension towards the end of the season or into next season, the offseason, really, where he's at with that, and who they wind up going after. Boudreau, Craig, I'll paraphrase for Craig Leopold, the owner of the Minnesota Wild, said that Boudreau is not going to be a part of the hiring process moving forward, that it'll be him and the team president. And they'll evaluate all the candidates that are out there. But he did reiterate several times that this is not going to be a rebuild, that this is going to be a retooling. And I understand it. You've had quite a bit of success. You got a good goaltender in there. You got some great defensemen. You got some great forwards. You just need a couple of tweaks. You need a couple of things here or there. I think Koivu is the first one to go. Buy him out. Bury him in the minors. Trade him. Whatever you can do. He can do really well fitting somewhere else let's be honest with each other, everybody's looking for a center. Miku would make a great second, a great third line center on a lot of teams if they can fit him into the cap. And the way the cap keeps growing, teams should be able to make that $5.5 million work over the next 2 seasons if they're desperate for somebody who, again, can come in and give their team a little bit of a different look. I wouldn't put Mikko Koivu on my team if you paid me $5.5 million a year. But still, the National Hockey League, they're going to see a lot of value in that guy. Jason Zucker is a $2 million player. He's an RFA. He'll obviously get a raise. I thought the Matt Cullen deal was good. I thought that Chuck Fletcher had a pretty good run. Let's take a look at his moves over the course of his career. You let me know what you thought was the best or what you thought was the worst, and if you thought any were really, really bad. Some of the good moves. Jason Zucker. The aforementioned Jason Zucker and Michael Granlund. He pulled the trigger on those 2 cats, drafted both of them. There you go. Good moves. He brought in Ryan Suter and Zach Parise, something that Craig Leopold alluded to in his press conference, which was the fact that this team, after the initial, hey, Minnesota got a team back again, started to steadily go on a decline. That summer where they signed both of them to 13-year, $98 million deals, suddenly they were selling out that building again, all over again. They revitalized that franchise a little bit, which didn't really need it, but it was starting to go down that route. Why not fix it on the fly? They did that. They also pulled the trigger on Nino Niederreiter. I loved Cal Clutterbuck when he was with Minnesota. He had grit to him. He was a 20-goal scorer, but he was being played far too much. It was a good move. I think a pretty decent move for both teams. Nino Niederreiter hated the Islanders. He goes to Minnesota. He can flourish. A little bit of an off year for him. Tends to be injured. The big knock on Nino is getting him motivated for 82 games a year. I've never really seen him in it that much. A little bit of a lazy player, but no doubt about it, a ton of skill and fit in really nice with Minnesota, and he pulled the best. He got the Henrik Zetterberg of goaltending in Devin Dubnyk. You know, he made the deal. He was in a bit of a pinch. It was a 3rd-round pick. I don't think that even Chuck Fletcher knew how good Devin Dubnyk was. I don't think Devin Dubnyk, his wife, or his mother even knew how good he was and how good he was going to turn out to be, but he turned out to be good. And, Chuck rolled the dice similarly to Eric Stahl. He saw something in the guy. He was slowing down in Carolina. He was not that great with the New York Rangers. And everybody, including this guy, his wife, and his mother, thought that he overpaid for Eric Stahl. And then Eric Stahl put 42 goals into the net and shut everybody up, including this guy, but not his wife or his mother. Don't tell them that, because I got a lot of explaining to do then. So he had a couple of players turn around and make him look really, really good. The bad deals. Nick Leddy for Cam Barker. Not a good deal. Leddy doesn't really work out for Chicago. They flip him over to the Islanders and get Ville Pokka back. And Pokka is still not really able to crack that NHL roster for a long period of time. Not a great move for the Minnesota Wild. You don't really move on a defenseman like Nick Leddy, who can move the puck up the ice so quickly for you. Some of his in-season deals have been bad. Sean Bergenheim, Matt Molson, Chris Stewart, just to name a few. He also pulled in a couple of other players that really never went anywhere. Martin Hanzal. Never really liked Martin Hanzal. Kind of like Mikko Koivu, a second-line centerman that is always overpaid and not that great. Tyler Innes coming in wasn't really all that great. He gave a big deal to Jason Pominville. That didn't seem to work out for him all that well. He lost Alex Tuck and what's his name? Holla to the Vegas Knights in the expansion draft. And Ilya Brizgalov didn't really work all that well out for them back in 2014. So Chuck has had some pretty big swing and misses, but every general manager tends to do that. Eric Holla. What did I say? Did I say the wrong Holla? So some pluses and minuses, but honestly, I kind of like Chuck Fletcher. I think his home runs were more grand slams than just barely eking out of the park. Again, Dubnyk, who's going to still pay dividends for you. Parise and Suter, who gave you a strong base to not only keep your fans paying those ticket prices, but help to attract other players to the franchise. And his latest big one was Eric Stahl. Guy scored 42 goals. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. Just amazing. Again, they seem to have a little trouble with that mid-6 sort of area for this team. Zucker scored 33. Granlund put in 21. Stahl, like I said, 42. Matthew Dumba seemed to find his offensive prowess this year, although still seems to be a little bit of a liability when it comes to defense. I like Charlie Coyle, a little bit of sandpaper and a little bit of goal scoring. Nino Niederreiter had 18 when he probably should have had 25. Parise was hurt in a big way. Got to keep him healthy for a better part of the year. But your Marcus Folignos and your Daniel Winnicks, your Tyler Ennis's, these guys have got to be better. You've got to sort of make those, 7, 8, 9 forwards be a little bit better throughout the course of the season. But they do have all the pieces there. There is no reason to break this thing down and start building up from scratch. They've got the pieces. They've just got to fine-tune it. And bringing in another set of eyes, not all that bad. Now, they could have went the way that it seems the league is going, which is you hire a president of hockey. Well, they already have a president, but a president of hockey operations, or you bring in somebody else to come in here, have something, or you knock Chuck up the ladder and you let another general manager come in here. So Chuck's still involved a little bit. They could have went that way. They don't. They make the change, and you can see it. We're playing audio for you, but I saw the video of Craig making the statements today, and he seemed pretty sad. He seemed pretty sad about it. Anyone hear about the tragedy that happened in Toronto today? 9 dead and 15 in the hospital. I did not. What happened in Toronto today? The media down here in the States seem to be very consumed with the Waffle House shooting in Nashville. There was a shooter that went crazy, and then they couldn't find him for a long time. But I think just before we got to the air here tonight, they did wind up capturing him. So that's good for those folks. I don't know who feels the need to walk into a Waffle House, which should pretty much be the happiest place, next to Disney World, a Waffle House. Fresh, fluffy waffles and butter and syrup makes everybody happy. I don't even know why anybody would want to bring that sort of terror to that establishment. I don't know, but that did happen. A truck ran down pedestrians on Yonge Street. You're kidding. In Toronto. How would you describe Yonge Street for those who don't know, Eddie? It's like a beautiful street. The Air Canada Centre, is the Air Canada Centre on Yonge, or is it a block or two over? Both times that I went to Toronto, I stayed at where the hell did I stay? What's the name of it? Not the Wynn. I can't remember the name of the hotel, but it was at the end of Yonge Street. It was at the end of Yonge Street, right on the water. Beautiful. Beautiful area. I think there was a really good fish place down towards right at the end of Yonge Street. I think it's is it the longest street in Canada or something? I remember 2/3 of facts. I honestly can't hold on to much. It's not like Broadway or anything. I don't know, but it's a big deal. Yonge Street's a big deal. ACC is near Union Station. Longest street in the world is Yonge Street. I don't know what happened. Do they know why he did it? Is it a crazy person? Like it was here in the States when that happened in Manhattan? Somebody else said that they're gonna have a moment of silence before the game tonight. I'm looking forward to this game. I've become really, really excited for Boston, Toronto. John says it's the longest street in the world too. There you go. Boston, Toronto tonight, game 6. Puck's about to be dropped over there on the NBC network, CBC up in Canada, CNBC for Washington and Columbus. By the way, I got to give credit to the National Hockey League for staggering these games. It's pretty much genius. They start one game at 7, they start the next game at 7:30, and then if you notice, we're getting the game that started at 7:30 during the intermission of game 1. And I don't even have to flip over anymore. Like, they're just switching it over. They've really shown a lot more hockey. It's really given me the ability to let them slide for the fact that they keep sneaking in 15-second commercials right after whistles. I don't really care for that all that much. They keep the action on the screen. They go split screen. It's commercial. And then, as the players are getting ready, it's a great use of time. It annoys me a little bit. I don't really care for it, but I understand they're trying to squeeze as much revenue out of these things as possible. Kale is pulling for the Leafs. I think it's the great scenario for the Leafs because they get a game 6 here, and they're at home. Like it couldn't have worked out better for them. Of course it could have. They could have won in 5 games. But it really is a good scenario where they're at home. They played well at home. They won a tough road game last time out, and everybody looks relatively healthy. Kadri came back and had a really nice game. So let's see where they're at with Toronto. I think this series is going 7. In my gut, I still think that there is just something with these Toronto Maple Leafs where they can get over the hill. Can I guarantee it? No. If we come here tomorrow and we're talking about the Boston Bruins winning, I'm not surprised. But I don't know. I just have a feeling about these Maple Leafs. I think they're far better than everybody's giving them credit for. Columbus and Washington, I actually think that the Capitals will finish this out. Now, Tortorella went ahead and guaranteed a victory, which is very un-Tortorella-like, although he does like to make demonstrative statements in the media. But usually that kind of talk comes from a player. For it to come from the head coach, I think is fairly interesting. I think Washington wins this one on the road. Again, if we come back here and we're talking about a game 7, am I surprised? Absolutely not. Not at all. But I think Washington is going to get past Columbus. What I think sucks for Washington, and we've been talking about this the last couple of shows, just a little bit here or there, is this has been a really tough series for them, and it's been really close, and they're going to get past this one just to run into the friggin' brick wall that is the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's just not going to be an easy playoff life for the Washington Capitals. It really, really isn't. And then we may have a hockeyless day tomorrow. Actually, we will have a hockeyless day tomorrow. And Game 7s will be on Wednesday if we have them at all. So we'll see what happens. Austin, I wouldn't be surprised if the Leafs embarrass the Bruins tonight. Can't get on your ship there. I can't get on your bandwagon there, Austin, but I would be surprised if they do. Boston's been good. Even in the losses, they've been good, I feel. I just feel like the Bruins can be beat. I just do. I really, really do. Let's talk about Bill Peters. A lot of people like this deal, and I honestly can't understand why. Brad Treliving and Bill Peters have a relationship together. By the way, I mean, tampering? I mean, how much is this tampering? A guy resigns on Friday, and by Monday morning at 11 a.m., he's across the continent having a press conference that he was hired. I mean, Jesus, give it a week's time. Make it look good. I understand there's a little bit of a timing issue because Bill Peters is going off to coach international. But still, I mean, come on. I said this in the last show, which I did while driving to a John Popper concert. I mentioned Calgary, and I said, I get the tie-in. He's a Calgary guy. He's from right outside of Calgary, same province. I understand there's a relationship between Treliving and him, and okay, but he's a losing head coach. I didn't think he would get a job so fast like this. He had a losing team, and not for nothing, but Sebastian Aho was practically a 30-goal scorer, 29 this year. Tara Vinen had 23 goals. Justin Williams had 16. Skinner, 24. Jordan Stahl, 19. This is a pretty talented team. Their goal-scoring ability is pretty spread out throughout their lineup. Skinner should be better. Tara Vinen should be better. Williams should be better. They all should be a little bit better. I just felt like he wasn't the right coach for them. I don't know. I'm not saying that Bill Peters isn't talented. The guy is talented. I just don't. I'm not 1,000% excited about this for Calgary. Could work. Maybe Peters works better there. Maybe he just has better chemistry with the players. Again, the Calgary Flames is another team that got such an exciting youth movement going on there. Goudreau, Monahan, and Kachuk, just really good. Backlund is okay. Furland is okay. Giordano and Brody. Sam Bennett's got to get off his ass a little bit. There's a team that's got to trim the fat a little bit between Troy Brouwer and Michael Frolik and Matt Stajan. It's time to move away from some of these players that the Calgary Flames have been loyal to quite some time and move on a little bit. So I think there's a couple more tweaks that Treliving needs to do for the Calgary Flames. But again, there's nothing in Bill Peters' short body of work as a National Hockey League coach that gets me excited about him going to the Calgary Flames. There's nothing. He had a losing record. He never went to the playoffs. He certainly had some of the tools. Was this a team in transition? Yeah, but, Cam Ward was better this year. Skinner was good. Like, they were all good. They were all doing their thing for a while. But I'm not that excited. Could it work? Sure can. Am I saying it's not going to work? Nope. I just don't seem to have the excitement that everybody else seems to have when they look at this deal. I really, really don't. A couple other quick hits before we go. Sean Couturier had one hell of a game his last game out for the Flyers. As it turns out, he had a torn MCL for 2 games. I can't eat when I burn my finger, I don't go to work. This guy's got a torn MCL. I think he scored like 4 or 5 goals, 6 goals, or whatever the hell he scored in 2 games. It was just insanity. Just insanity. And we'll leave it there. Give me the Maple Leafs in the game tonight. Give me the Washington Capitals. One series goes to 7. The other one gets closed out. Moment of silence at the Leafs game right now. I will leave you with a moment of silence here by ending the show. Thanks to everybody who watched. Thumbs up on the video on Facebook or YouTube. If you're on iTunes, listening via the podcast, make sure you guys rate and review. Make sure you follow us on Spotify, Stitcher, and the TuneIn Radio app. You can all throw some hearts or follows there. It all definitely helps. We will see you guys on the next show. No hockey tomorrow. Perhaps we'll talk a little bit more about some moves that are made. If there's any hockey news, we'll be sure to be here and talking about it. Cale, thanks for the kind words. I will leave you guys at that. See you on the next shift. Enjoy your night of hockey. A couple of good